She's been to not one, but two Olympic Games, has set the Canadian record for the 100-meter hurdles, which at 12.46 seconds still stands. And she won 10 Canadian national championships. Perdita Felicien did all of those things and much more. She's a sports broadcaster, a mom, and now author of the forthcoming book, My Mother's Daughter, a memoir of struggle and triumph. What a pleasure to welcome Perdita Felicien from her home in Ajax, Ontario. Hi, so nice to finally meet you.
Right, Nam? I feel like we have mutual friends and everything, but we haven't officially met, but we're meeting now, like through the interwebs, right?
Yeah, it's a first step, and I'm so glad that you're here on our episode for Canada Day. Your memoir, My Mother's Daughter, was supposed to come out this year, but because of the pandemic, it's been postponed until next year. We have the cover of it, and there's a picture of you and your mother. How would you describe your relationship with your mother?
Very connected, I would say. And, my mother came from St. Lucia, immigrant. She was just a nanny and just met a affluent Canadian couple on the beach, volunteered to babysit their child. She was 18, pregnant with her second child, and basically took care of their 3-month-old every day of their vacation. And a few years later, they brought her to Canada, and that's how the adventure began. I was born in Canada. So when I look back at all the steps that my mother took and all the hurdles, puns, that she had to overcome, now that I'm a new mother, there's a sense of real gratitude for her, for all the things that she's had to go through as, first timer or foreigner, I'd say, to Canada.
It's interesting that you said gratitude because I think when we're kids, we see our parents are our world. They can't make any mistakes. They have to be infallible. But I think when you do become a parent, you look at your parents like, oh, they were people before they had me. So do you think that becoming a parent has given you maybe a different view of your mother and who she was when she was raising you?
Yeah, that is such a profound statement that you make because I think it took me about 4 years to write this memoir. And, to your point, you see your parents as heroes and saviors in a sense or, whatever it is. But in this, I really saw my mother's humanity. There are a lot of things that I learned about her struggle. There's a lot of new things that I reveal in this book that I've never even talked before about as an athlete. There are a lot of answers I didn't know. And so when I looked at my mother's life, I'm like, oh, you are a young woman just like I am now. And so my mother had to make a decision whether to keep me, like when I was conceived, or whether to let me go because my father was not going to support her, was not going to be there for her. So she had to make a decision literally on the spot, and I detail it in the book, but whether or not to abort the child, me, to stay in Canada and continue working and trying to take care of her two kids who were born in St. Lucia, or keep me in a country where she had no status, no citizenship, and was making, dollars a day and working pretty much 6 days a week from 7 till like 6 at night. So when we talk about our parents as our heroes and those sorts of things, for me, what really came clear is, my mother had some hard decisions to make. And there are things that I know I wouldn't do, in my life, those decisions I wouldn't make. But I know had she not made those decisions, Nam, then I wouldn't have, this, for me, very fortunate life that I now have.
And your daughter now will have because of all the accomplishments that you've had. And I don't want to talk too much about what's in the book because it's coming next year. But what was your childhood like growing up in the GTA?
Yeah, so I grew up in the wonderful Ontario town of Pickering, and it's still near and dear to my heart. Growing up, I was in a household with I was the first generation Canadian, rather, the first of my mother's children. And so for me, my mother would always have this saying, don't make foolishness with your life, right? And it's like, when you grow up now, it's like your parents lecture you and they just say all these things like, what is mom saying? Why is she ranting and yelling? And she would always say, don't do what I did. I didn't know what mom was talking about. What did you do, right? You're 9, you're 10, you're 16. Yeah, it's just noise. And so growing up for me, we didn't have a lot of money. Like we were broke, but for me, it never felt that way. And it's only now as this independent, career-driven person that I am, that I can look back and say, oh, this was missing and this was lacking. But we never ever felt it because it always felt like my mother's love was enough. And so I have 4 other siblings, and we're all age ranges. My older 2 are about 8 years older than me. So you'd understand there's a huge divide. And so we really found that my older sister was a parent to me, and the rest of us little ones, because my mother was always out working. So growing up in co-op housing in Pickering, Ontario, shout out to Deffin's Creek Co-op, for me, it was, I wouldn't have had it any other way. And now my daughter, Nova, won't have that. And we've broken, I feel, curses might be it might be too strong of a word, but we've broken some of the cycles to me that weren't, the strongest. So, Nova has a 2-parent household, and she'll grow up and know she'll go to university if she chooses to. Those are things I didn't have. But, I don't think I would have changed it because, man, it gave me a lot of grit, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the resilience. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because if you're first generation, for a lot of immigrants, the career choices that you have are very limited. It's like doctor, and maybe lawyer, and maybe engineer. So how did you end up in sports?
I never had the ambition to be like an athlete or go on to like be a pro runner and go to the Olympics. In fact, my mother and I had no idea like the Olympics even existed, believe it or not. Because, her growing up in St. Lucia, sport and extracurricular activity, those things weren't on her radar. Those weren't opportunities or options for her. So she didn't know. I did not choose the hurdles. In fact, I hated the 100-meter hurdles, hated them. But I got into probably 3rd grade, and the gym teacher, Mrs. Arthurs, I don't know if you remember Canada Fitness. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yes. Yes. So I did that in grade 3 or 4. And I was the only one in my whole entire class that got the excellence badge at Glengrove Public School. And then when the awards came, they gave you these little badges, and the teacher gave everyone theirs. And at the end, she said, but there's one special person who got an award level that nobody else has gotten. And it was me. I got the excellence badge. And Nam, I felt like I could burst in our little gymnasium, sitting with my classmates. I felt like I could burst. So she called me up and I got the award. And that was my first inkling, the first that anyone had told me that I was good in this athletic, arena. I didn't know. And so I did the 100 meters for a really long time. That was grade probably 3 or 4 to about grade 7. And then the 100-meter hurdles, I got introduced to it by some classmates. But I quit. I quit after 2 years going into high school because I got beat at a race in grade 8. Like, it was a big deal to me. I cried. I was like, I'm done with this stuff. And my ego was handed to me. So I quit for 2 years. And when I went back in grade 10, because my mother kept nagging me, the coach reintroduced me to track and field and the hurdles, and he made me do it. And I said to him, Mr. Sahadev, of Oshawa Excels, I said, I hate the hurdles. Get me out of it. I'm here to be a long jumper and a sprinter. And he refused, Nam. So every single workout, he only coached me as a hurdler. So then I had no choice, basically. And it's a wonder I never quit. I wonder why I didn't quit. I don't know. Destiny.
Well, maybe it's because too you had those 2 people saw something in yourself that you didn't see in yourself.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've been to the Olympics twice. Not many people can say they even got close to getting to the Olympics. And you would have been to 3 if not for an injury. We've talked about you being a kid in the GTA and growing up with some of the challenges that you endured in your childhood. What did that mean to you to make it to the pinnacle of sporting excellence?
Yeah. Goodness, you're getting to the surface of so many things. I will say this, for me, getting to the Olympics was, I can't say it was a dream because we've already discussed that. I didn't really find sport. It kind of found me and I didn't know it existed. So when I finally was world class, one of the top 2 in the world, for me, the Olympics was very much a sense of accomplishment. And not only for me, Nam, really for my mother. It was almost like, hey, Mom, like, you did it. Like, you have done so right by all of us that here's this tangible proof of all of that. So the Olympics, yes, it's the biggest pinnacle and platform in my sport. But I think being years removed from it now, I look back and I'm like, but if the only thing anybody ever says about me is that you were a good runner or you ran over 10, barriers really, really fast, then that's not enough. And my mother would tell me growing up, she said, she would support me. She was my number 1 supporter, absolutely. But what she would always say to me is, get your education, get your education, don't make foolishness with your life. And so I realized what she was saying to me is, she literally said, if you ever fall down, which I have, if you ever get hurt, what you have in here, no injury, no man can take that away from you. And so she instilled that in me. Yes, you are a sportswoman. Yes, you're an athlete, but you got to be more than that.
Well, I mean, that brings me up to what I was going to ask next, because
Yeah.
there was a lot expected from you going into Athens in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it probably felt like the weight of the country was on your shoulders, let
Mm-hmm.
alone personal expectations. How were you able to pivot from not bringing the gold back home and moving forward?
Yeah, like Athens was a tough thing because, of course, I went into their, number one hurdler in the world. I hadn't lost leading up to the Athens Olympics. I'd broken the Canadian record, and literally, there's 3 rounds in the 100-meter hurdles at the Olympics, and I had won the first 2 rounds, and I had won them basically running as fast as I'd ever had. And then the third round hit the final rather hit the first hurdle, which is so fast, hit the first hurdle. So to answer your question, devastation, right? That's the first thing, devastation, and having to accept that and having to ask myself, what does that mean that I've fallen, and how can I overcome this? So if anyone's ever gone through like a total meltdown or breakdown or something happened, which maybe it's not at the Olympics, but it's at home or boardroom or your family, you understand that there's a lot of questions, right? Why me? Why me? And so the first thing that I had to do was feel all the feels, right? Cry, rage, feel sorry for myself. I did all of that. And I did have the gold, which I just previously explained. For me, the gold for me would have been this tangible object to bring back to my mom and to my hometown of Pickering and to Canada and be like, yes, right? Look at this. Look what we've done, because it's taken a community to really help me and my family get on our way. So it took years to get to the place where now I can even discuss it. But it really was understanding that Athens, or your darkest, deepest moment, simply you have to do the work to get past it. But what happens is, Nam, now that experience becomes a well for you to draw from. It becomes a well of strength for you to draw from. So will I tell Nova about that day? Yes, absolutely. Will she have her hard days? Sure. But don't I have this moment in time where I can say, I understand what that feels like. I understand what you're going through, because here's the truth. Most of us fall flat more than we ever win an Olympic gold. And that's just the reality of being a human being.
You still hold the Canadian women's record for the fastest 100-meter. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I'm like, blow the Death Star, right? Like, this thing is what? 2004. What's the math, Nam? Like,
That's 16 years.
Oh God. Oh God. Yeah.
That's a teenager.
That's a whole human being teenager. Okay. You know what? I don't really think and reflect on it that much. And I love that you brought it up, because it's just made my heart smile. The fact that it's still standing is, I think, a tribute to just what I've been able to do. And it feels cocky at times, tuning your own horns. But I think with everything going on lately, I realized that, yeah, that brought me joy, and that was a big deal, and I can celebrate myself. So I'm choosing to do that. But my daughter's one, her name's Nova, and there's a part of me that's like, records are meant to be broken. What if Nova, hey, when I'm 65 or whatever, breaks my record? That would be awesome. But for me, it's still a little something that I cling to. It's still a proud moment.
Well, you went back to school and you studied journalism. Why journalism?
I went in, and you alluded to it. So I had went to 2 Olympics, and I missed 2008 with injury. But CBC called me and said, do you want to come and broadcast? And I thought, sure. And I went to Beijing in 2008, and I broadcasted, and it was so hurtful, Dan, because I was supposed to be in that race, but here I am giving commentary. So it was kind of a very strange place to find myself. But once I checked my emotions of the heartbreak again, especially this was 4 years after Athens and falling, what I realized is, oh my God, I love the camera. Like, I love telling stories. I love, I don't know how you feel about it, but I just love being able to like tell a story and convey that. And I really felt that in 2008. And so I wouldn't retire for another 5 years. And I didn't say anything to anyone, but I thought, when you retire, girl, this is your second chapter. This is your second coming. This is what I'm going to do. And so I'm doing
Well,
it.
you were terrific because you were so natural at it, and that's when I became familiar with your work. It was really nice to see a Black woman at the Olympics reporting And I think you also had like the inside scoop because the
Yeah.
athletes knew, like, they respected you because you knew what it was like to be on that field. So what was the transition from being, you just said that it was hard then, but what has the transition been like for you from athlete to journalist?
Yeah, so here's the thing that I had prepared myself for a long time to transition. And one of the things I really wanted to do is if I'm going to be, competing for 10 years, 12 years, then I want to have something to show for it later. And so I was always preparing. I was saving my money. And when you grow up broke, there's something for me, I didn't ever want to feel that again. I never wanted to be hungry. I never wanted to have lights cut off. So I really prepared for a good transition. But the truth is, I don't believe that all athletes think that day will come because it feels so far away. I also prepared myself for the applause being gone, if that makes sense, right? The adoration and the people, loving you because you do this, amazing thing that not a lot of people can do. And it gets really quiet, right? It gets really quiet when that's all gone. So if you really get high from the success and the winning and the attention, then when you retire, it seems weird that you retire at 32 and 33, but that's the truth. When you retire from something that you've known for most of your life, it can be very lonely. But because I knew I wanted to be a broadcaster, it gave me almost another finish line to chase, another challenge to get to. And I feel like I've just really sunk my teeth so fully into this that I feel like a whole person. I don't feel like I'm missing or losing anything out. And one more thing I'll say about that is, being at the Olympics now, and I've been a broadcaster at two Olympics now, summer and winter, 2016, 2018. And here's what I will say. I really have to check my emotions when I'm at an Olympic mix zone and I'm interviewing athletes. And I'm so glad and relieved that I'm at peace with my experience, Olympic gold or not. Because could you imagine interviewing someone who's fresh off an Olympic record or an Olympic gold medal, and here I am, haven't made peace with my past, and I'm holding a microphone to them, right? Do you understand how that feeling could just come up and like overwhelm me? And I said, no, not going to be that person. What is for you will always be for you. And so now when I go into the mix zone, I feel it's just a sense more of privilege. And I am truly, sincerely like happy and excited for people who do well. But I also encounter people who had a bad day like I did in Athens. And I feel I can relate to them in many ways.
Well, you recently you shared something on social media, and I just wanted to bring up the tweet and read it to
Yeah.
you. You write, I took this pic today of the needles from my IVF journey. I don't touch on this much, but it's hashtag Infertility Awareness Week, and our baby turns 1 on Sunday. Hashtag
Mhm.
1 in 6 Canadians will struggle with infertility. Let's erase the stigma. I hope my sharing helps with that.
Yeah.
Hashtag infertility warrior. That image is so powerful. Why did you decide to share your struggle with infertility?
Yeah, gosh, I was 2 years into my journey before I shared that, and that was the first public share. I think because Nova is our miracle baby, right? We had to get help. Science had to help us have her, and I kept reading a lot about women struggling, and here I am in the shadows, keeping quiet. It wasn't really shame. I'm just private in that way, right? But the more I saw this happening and women having this conversation, I was like, oh, this is normal. There's nothing wrong with you or your partner. And I also felt, what if someone like me who has a platform, who has a voice, who some people might think has a lot of things going for them, says, hey, I struggle in this way. And so I decided to share that. Also, Nam, 38, 39 years old, having my first child with my husband. And I had wished that someone would have said to the younger me, hey, the same way you consider your retirement and how you're going to save for that, the same way, you try and figure out how to save for a house, what if you tried to figure out what's going on with your ex, right? Not to put it in the best of terms, but I wish someone had said to me, have you considered what you're going to do with your fertility? And here's the thing, I didn't know if I wanted to have children, but it would have been nice to have the option to preserve my fertility a little bit longer. So I put that out there if it just helps one woman, one family decide that it's something that they have to have a conversation about or start thinking about. And ma'am, so many DMs, so many messages, people I don't know from around the world were like, help me. What do you do? Thank you. And I was like, it was right to do that.
And now there's so much stuff happening in the world. You sharing that tweet helped so many people. And now with Black Lives Matter, the protests going around the world, do you feel an additional responsibility to talk about it as an athlete?
Yeah, well, here's the thing about what's going
Or
on
is
right
it
now. And I
intimidating?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. It is intimidating, and it can be. And so the question was posed to me: if I was an athlete and everything that's going on with with racial inequality and just the turmoil that's happening, would I have stood up and protested? And I had to be really honest with myself. And I didn't like my answer, but it was the truth. I said no. I wouldn't have felt safe. I wouldn't have felt okay, because time and time again, as Black people, when we speak up about racism and racial inequality, we are attacked or threatened, and it's almost like you're making that up. It doesn't exist. So now the 39-year-old self-assured me feels more confident. But here's the thing I noticed, Nam, and I don't know if you noticed it too. Everything that's happening around us, I feel like we're not alone in this. When I look into these crowds of people protesting, they look to be all different races, all different ages and generations, a lot of them led by this younger generation. So I think today's athlete feels probably a little bit stronger and more confident to speak out and tell their story and speak out against racism without feeling retribution. Doesn't mean they won't get it, but they probably feel a little bit more self-assured.
And I don't think you should be ashamed of how you felt, because we have seen it in history when Black athletes speak out and how, their careers are affected. I mean, the biggest example is Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, he is. And here's the thing: there's talk now about maybe he's going to get a deal. To me, I feel like he's transcended the NFL, he's transcended football. But yes, took a knee, peaceful protest, had nothing to do with disrespecting the American flag, but completely lost his livelihood, blackballed, blacklisted. So that is truthfully what you're facing as an athlete: your popularity, your sponsors, your whole entire livelihood. And I'm happy to hear you say that I shouldn't feel any shame about it. And for me, what gives me great pride and hope is seeing these athletes now speak up and say, hey, and people are being checked. It's not cute, it's not cool anymore. And it's almost like part of me is, I'm deeply emotional about this, but part of me is upset because I'm like, we've been here all this time. How are you just learning and listening now? We've always been here. We've always been saying this. In fact, our throats are hoarse, right? And our hearts are heavy and broken. And you're just now seeing us. But I feel like I don't want our children to keep fighting this battle for another hundred and hundreds of years. It has to end.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because at the very beginning we were talking about your mother and myself. One of the reasons why I was nervous about being a parent was because this fear of having my Black children experience racism and have to deal with those things, because I kind of feel like I can bear that, but I don't want it for my children. And when I had a son, and I was actually very specifically very nervous about having a son, because I knew that it would make it that much harder. What has becoming a parent in the age of, I guess, what we would call Black Lives Matter meant to you?
Ah, goodness. This time, I hope you're good now, because I know that we as parents and as Black people and Black women and Indigenous people are feeling this, right? It feels good to be seen and heard, but I think there's a sense of, is this actual change? Is this performative, or is this real systemic change? And I think we're all poised and waiting. So to answer your question, it's different for me now because I have Nova. And this is the loudest that this uprising has ever felt to me in my lifetime. And I'm sure the same for you. And I want to protect her, and I want to keep her away from this. And the lovely Tracy Moore, who we both know, shared a message on her Instagram. She's the host of Cityline. And she shared a message, and she said, and it resonated with me, it says, some of us fight racism
With
by,
joy.
yes, for our children, allowing our children to experience joy. And when I saw that, I said, yes, yes, yes. We'll fight this battle right now. We'll do the heavy lifting right now. If it means that your two children, if it means that my Nova, if it means the next brown and Black child doesn't have to live this thing anymore, we will do the heavy lifting now and shelter them from it with their laughs and their giggles and anything else that they can experience within our bubble of love, really.
So it kind of feels as if the fight for equality maybe carries an even greater weight now that we are parents.
It does. I think it really, really does, because, and here's the thing, like, I've questioned myself, like, can we dismantle this thing? And again, I hate that I think that, but I wonder, like, it's so simple to me. Don't hate. Don't treat someone different because of the way they look, because of the color. It's so rudimentary to me. And so, is it a different battle cry I feel as a mom? Yes. I'm speaking out. I'm using my voice more. Whereas I said, as an athlete, the 20-something-year-old me, not a mother, I would have remained, I wouldn't have made waves. I wouldn't have said it too loud. Now I will, and I don't care. So, has my Twitter count gone down when I tweet about race and stuff? Yeah, I see people drop off, but don't follow because this is not for you. On Instagram, same thing. This is not for you. And 6 months from now and a year from now, Nam, we know we'll be doing the work. We know we'll still be having this conversation. And we really need allies, white allies, to stay with us in this fight. You might be feeling burnt out. I've been hearing this talk of feeling burnt out in the last few weeks because this is a lot, it's daunting. My privilege, great. Imagine, and there's a lot of things like this, imagine having to live with racism and combat it all your life. A stain that's as old as time. It's exhausting. We're tired. And so for me, does this battle have different meaning now that I'm a parent? Yes, it does. Because I don't want my daughter to ever be called the N-word, which has happened to me in Canada, in our beloved Canada. Racism is here. It exists. So we can't fool ourselves and think that it's not here.
And I think for all the things that you have accomplished, Nova has a lot to be proud of, including your mother. And it's been such an absolute pleasure having you on the show and meeting you in this way. And hopefully, once all this is done, we can meet in person.
Yes.
And maybe a hug, maybe a chat in the park, have the kids play. Yeah. But it's been amazing having you. Thank you so much, Perdita. We appreciate it.
I love it, Nan. It's been so good talking to you. See you next time. Bye.
All right. Bye.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.